your phone buzzes. Another headline, U.S. tariffs deal blow to developing economies. You shrug, scroll past, and move on. But behind those headlines, real countries are collapsing under economic pressure. Factories are shutting down, workers are getting laid off, and entire industries are being gutted, quietly, without a soundbite. This isn't about trade wars between giants like China and the US. It's about the smaller nations, the forgotten ones that are getting steamrolled. In this video, we're counting down the 10 countries quietly crushed by US tariffs in 2025. Some are developing nations hanging by a thread. Others are unexpected casualties that never saw it coming. But the last one? That one might just break your heart. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more engaging content. Number 10. Lesotho. This tiny, landlocked country in southern Africa barely makes the global headlines. But in 2025, it became one of the unexpected victims of America's new trade rules. U.S. tariffs on textiles and apparel hit Lesotho's garment industry hard, and the ripple effects were immediate. Lesotho relies heavily on the U.S. for garment exports under trade programs like AGOA. But with new tariffs imposed, orders began to dry up. In just 6 months, Lesotho lost nearly 30% of its apparel export contracts to the U.S. Thousands of factory workers, mostly women, were laid off, leaving families without income in a country where the unemployment rate already hovers around 24%. Local reports estimate that nearly 40,000 textile jobs are now at risk. For a nation of just 2 million, that's devastating. The government is scrambling to negotiate new trade terms, but time is running out. Without immediate support or alternative markets, Lesotho faces a potential collapse of its primary export sector. And for the women who power those factories, the future looks heartbreakingly uncertain. Did you ever imagine a small country like Lesotho could feel the weight of U.S. tariffs? Is anyone even paying attention? Number 9. Switzerland. When you think of countries crushed by U.S. tariffs, Switzerland probably isn't the first that comes to mind. But in 2025, a shocking 39% tariff was slapped on key Swiss exports, blindsiding one of the world's most stable economies. According to Swissinfo, the decision has sent ripples through the nation's pharmaceutical and machinery sectors. Switzerland's strength lies in precision manufacturing and high-value exports, both now targeted by Washington's tariff strategy. The U.S. justified the move as part of a broader campaign to rebalance trade, but the fallout has been swift. Major Swiss firms have reported declining sales and mounting pressure to shift operations elsewhere. The irony? Switzerland has maintained one of the most consistent, cooperative trade relationships with the U.S. for decades. Now, businesses are scrambling to reorient supply chains, with some exploring moves to Asia or the EU to bypass the tariffs. Politically, the decision has strained bilateral trust. For a country that prides itself on neutrality and economic diplomacy, this blow feels deeply personal. Swiss leaders have already voiced concerns at the WTO, but with U.S. trade policy taking a nationalist turn, relief seems far off. The chill in U.S.-Swiss relations is real, and it's hurting their economy more than anyone expected. How does a rich, neutral country like Switzerland end up in a U.S. trade war? What do you think is happening here? Number 8. Bangladesh. Bangladesh's garment industry is its economic lifeline, employing over 4 million people and accounting for 84% of the country's exports. But in 2025, U.S. tariffs slammed into the sector like a freight train, causing chaos across factories and export centers. According to the Daily Star, these new barriers are threatening the very core of the country's growth engine. The United States has long been one of Bangladesh's top customers, importing billions in apparel annually. But with tariffs now raising prices by 20 to 25%, U.S. retailers are turning to cheaper suppliers in other regions. As orders drop, thousands of workers, mostly women, are being laid off or seeing reduced hours. Factories that were once humming around the clock are now running at half capacity. The government is scrambling to offer support, but fiscal resources are tight and public unrest is growing. For many, the fear isn't just job loss, it's losing a path out of poverty. This isn't just a trade issue, it's a humanitarian crisis in the making. Bangladesh helped build America's fast fashion empire, and now it feels abandoned. The longer these tariffs remain, the deeper the scars they'll leave on millions of lives. Are U.S. tariffs destroying the garment industry in Bangladesh? Can they survive this blow? Drop your thoughts. Number 7. South Africa. South Africa, already grappling with power shortages and high unemployment, is now feeling the sting of U.S. tariffs. These new trade penalties have hit key export sectors, including automotive and agricultural goods. According to Business Live, the South African economy has taken a severe blow in 2025, with key trade routes slowing dramatically. The ripple effects are clear: decreased foreign revenue, factory layoffs, and a weakening rand that makes imports even more expensive. Local businesses are scrambling to adjust, but many small and medium-sized enterprises lack the resources to survive the shock. The country's fragile recovery post-pandemic is at risk of unraveling. Even more concerning is how the tariffs strain South Africa's trade relationships with other key partners. As the U.S. becomes a less reliable export destination, the pressure is mounting to diversify rapidly. But building new trade partnerships takes time, and time is not on South Africa's side. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. Families are facing job insecurity, shelves are thinning in stores, and inflation is eating away at savings. The impact is real, and for millions of South Africans, the future just got more uncertain. Why is South Africa getting hit so hard? Are the ripple effects of U.S. policy being ignored? Number 6. Vietnam. Vietnam has been one of Asia's fastest-growing economies, thanks in part to booming exports to the U.S. But now, U.S. tariffs are slowing that momentum. According to Vietnam News, the country's export growth rate has dipped noticeably in 2025. Sectors like electronics, garments, and furniture, long considered Vietnam's bread and butter, are seeing shrinking orders and delayed shipments. This puts massive pressure on manufacturers, many of whom rely heavily on U.S. demand. Layoffs are starting to creep in, especially in industrial hubs like Ho Chi Minh City and Da Nang. The Vietnamese government is trying to pivot by strengthening regional trade ties, but that strategy won't produce immediate relief. With over 30% of exports tied to the U.S. market, there's no quick fix. Businesses are bracing for a turbulent ride ahead. More than just an economic slowdown, this shift could trigger a long-term restructuring of Vietnam's trade priorities. For now, though, workers, small business owners, and exporters are feeling the pain. The tariffs aren't just numbers, they're life-changing shocks rippling through an entire nation. Vietnam used to be America's trade darling. So why is it now on the losing end? What changed in 2025? Before we dive into number 5, quick heads up. If you're hooked on stories like this, you'll love what I share on YouTube Peaks. From behind-the-scenes research to early topic drops, it's where the real deep dives happen. Links below. Come join the Inside Circle. Number 5, India. India, one of the world's largest and most dynamic economies, has unexpectedly found itself cornered by a fresh wave of harsh U.S. tariff policies in 2025. For a country that had been steadily expanding its global trade footprint, these tariffs are more than just a setback. They're a direct threat to key industries. Reuters reports that India's trade surplus has slowed significantly this year, as U.S. levies have eaten into its competitive pricing edge and reshaped global buyer behavior. The consequences are cascading across the country. Small and medium enterprises, in the lifeblood of India's export machine, are now seeing orders slashed, contracts canceled, and profit margins squeezed. Textile mills in Surat and pharmaceutical hubs in Hyderabad and Ludhiana are laying off workers, while export-focused businesses are struggling to meet new compliance costs. Hopes had been high that India would step in to fill the gap as Western companies diversified away from China. But those ambitions have been thwarted by the rising cost of doing business with the United States. With Washington showing little interest in backtracking, the Modi government is racing to strike new trade deals elsewhere, while internal pressures from labor unions and small exporters continue to mount. What's at stake is more than just trade. It's India's long-term credibility as a reliable export powerhouse. If the current slowdown turns structural, India risks losing its edge in the competitive global supply chain network. For a country that's pinned its economic recovery on export-led growth, this could mean stalling progress at a crucial juncture in its post-pandemic rebuilding. Has the U.S. pushed India too far this time? Is this trade tension turning into a full-blown economic rift? Number 4, Algeria. Algeria, already grappling with double-digit unemployment, surging inflation, and political fragility, is now facing a fresh economic storm: U.S. tariffs that have sharply curtailed its export earnings. According to APS, these tariffs have hit the country's hydrocarbon and agricultural sectors particularly hard, both of which form the backbone of Algeria's economy. trade officials warn that 2025 could end with one of the steepest year-on-year declines in export revenue in over a decade. At shipping terminals and warehouses, the impact is playing out in real time. Cargo delays are increasing, shipping costs are spiking, and many international buyers are turning to alternative suppliers. This is placing immense pressure on Algeria's already strained public budget and further fueling frustration among citizens who feel their economic prospects are slipping away. What makes this downturn even more alarming is Algeria's lack of economic diversification. With over 90% of its foreign income tied to oil and gas exports, the country is uniquely vulnerable to external shocks like tariffs. The situation is made worse by volatile global oil prices and the lingering aftereffects of COVID-era economic stagnation. Though the government is seeking to build new trade partnerships with emerging markets and the EU, the damage done by the U.S. tariffs is unlikely to be quickly reversed. Economists warn that if Algeria can't stabilize its export performance soon, it could tip into recession territory. In a country where economic hardship has historically fueled political unrest, the risks go far beyond the numbers. This is about social stability, national morale, and the ability of an entire population to endure yet another crisis. Algeria rarely makes headlines, but are U.S. tariffs quietly crushing its future? Surprised to see it here? Number 3. Laos. At first glance, Laos might not seem like a major player in global trade. It's a landlocked country with a modest industrial base and limited diplomatic leverage. But for a developing nation with few strong export partners, the weight of U.S. tariffs in 2025 has been nothing short of catastrophic. According to the Vientiane Times, Laos has experienced a significant decline in trade revenue since the new duties went into effect, cutting off critical lifelines for its fragile economy. Laos depends heavily on a narrow range of exports, agricultural goods and timber. These sectors are highly sensitive to price volatility, and even a small disruption in trade flows can upend entire local economies. With U.S. protectionist measures tightening access to one of its key markets, Laos is facing a sharp drop in earnings and widespread instability. Many rural communities, already teetering on the edge of poverty, are now reporting severe hardships. Local businesses across Laos are sounding the alarm. Textile manufacturers are dealing with higher production costs and decreasing international orders. Farmers are stuck with unsold crops, while transportation firms are seeing less freight moving across borders. The cascading effect has led to job cuts, reduced hours, and the shuttering of family-run enterprises. For a country where over 18% of the population lives below the poverty line, the consequences are not just economic, they're existential. The most painful part? Laos lacks the tools to fight back. There's no deep-pocketed recovery fund, no strong trade unions to lobby for relief, and no seat at major negotiating tables. As major economies play geopolitical chess with tariffs and counter-tariffs, Laos finds itself trapped in the middle, without leverage, without visibility, and without much hope of relief. In this silent storm, it's the small and vulnerable that bear the brunt of global power plays. Can a small economy like Laos survive under this kind of pressure, or is this collapse inevitable? Number 2. Philippines. The Philippines' export sector is being battered, and most of the world isn't paying attention. U.S. tariffs introduced in 2025 have quietly undercut a wide range of industries, from electronics and semiconductors to coconut oil and bananas. According to the Inquirer, the sudden shifts in trade policy have left exporters reeling, struggling with shrinking contracts and prolonged delivery timelines. Electronics remain the crown jewel of Philippine exports, making up over half of the country's total outbound shipments. Now, with American buyers facing higher costs due to tariffs, firms are cutting back on orders or seeking cheaper suppliers elsewhere. This has prompted mass layoffs in tech hubs such as Calabarzon and Cebu, where factories that once ran around the clock are now operating at reduced capacity. For thousands of families who rely on these jobs, the financial strain is immediate and severe. Agricultural exports, another vital pillar of the economy, are also suffering. Products like mangoes, pineapples, and coconut oil, once staples in U.S. markets, are now subject to increased scrutiny and costs. Farmers in Mindanao and other rural areas are reporting unsold harvests and plummeting incomes. With climate challenges already threatening crop yields, this added layer of economic pain has deepened existing vulnerabilities. Despite the Duterte administration's attempts to pivot toward regional trade blocs and strengthen domestic production, the U.S. remains a crucial partner. Losing traction in that market disrupts everything from tax revenues to remittance-driven consumption. And with inflation rising and public debt swelling from pandemic-era relief programs, the timing of these trade tensions couldn't be worse. For the Philippines, this isn't just a trade dispute. It's a crisis that reaches into every household, school, and community trying to build a better future. Why would the U.S. target one of its closest allies in Asia? Is this about trade or something deeper? Number 1. Brazil. Sitting at the top of this list is Brazil, Latin America's largest economy and a country once poised to deepen its global trade influence. But in 2025, that momentum was abruptly halted. U.S. tariffs hit hard, especially on steel, aluminum, and a range of agricultural exports, triggering widespread economic disruption. According to Reuters, Brazil's steel exports to the United States plummeted by nearly 40% year-over-year, wiping billions off the books and impacting an industry that supports over 110,000 jobs. The agricultural sector didn't fare much better. Soybean producers and beef exporters, heavily reliant on the U.S. market, have seen demand nosedive. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a larger storm unsettling Brazil's rural and industrial heartlands. The ripple effects have gone far beyond just profit margins. President Lula's government is now fending off pressure from powerful labor unions and agricultural lobbyists, while simultaneously managing rising inflation and a currency under strain. Massive infrastructure investments that once depended on U.S. capital have been shelved or scrapped altogether, prompting Brazil to fast-track new economic dialogues with China and the European Union. What makes Brazil's story especially heartbreaking is the quiet way it all unfolded. No dramatic speeches, no viral trade war headlines, just slow, steady erosion. Entire communities are now grappling with job losses, stalled exports, and a national economy suddenly in retreat. Brazil at number 1. Did that break your heart too? Are we witnessing the collapse of a vital global partner? What do these 10 stories have in common? None of these countries made international headlines, but all of them were hit when it mattered most. From the textile mills of Bangladesh to the coffee farms of Laos, entire economies were kneecapped by U.S. tariffs in ways that slipped under the radar. And this wasn't just a clash of governments. These tariffs upended lives, from Lesotho's factory workers to Switzerland's precision exporters and Brazil's steel laborers. Every new tariff triggered layoffs, protests, policy overhauls, and in some cases, deep resentment that's reshaping long-standing diplomatic relationships. If you're still thinking tariffs are just part of high-level trade deals, think again. They're altering livelihoods and political alignments across the globe. And the fallout is still coming. So if you want to keep up with the shifts that matter, the ones that change maps, alliances, and futures, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone who thinks trade wars are just politics. Because these stories, they're personal, they're urgent, and they're far from over.